The Galactic Coalition's command tower on the orbital station above Kethra 9 buzzed with quiet amusement as reports came in of an unknown human fleet entering the border zone, a no-war region guarded by treaty and custom. Captain Yorvex of the Yilax Dominion, commander of the powerful dreadnought Fury of Stars, stood at the observation window, his narrow, scale-lined eyes scanning the display of 10 small ships drifting slowly into the designated neutral space. They were mismatched, small, barely shielded, and looked like retrofitted cargo ships or forgotten survey vessels. Even the junior officers chuckled when they pulled up sensor data, no signs of active weapons, no fleet formation, and an approach, a vector that suggested they had only recently discovered gravity stabilizers. "Is this a test?" one of Yorvex's aides asked with a sneer. "Surely humans know better than to trespass here with toys." Yorvex waved him off and activated the diplomatic channel, sending a standard hail across multiple frequencies. No reply. The humans drifted silently, their ships idle like a lost caravan. It had been nearly 100 cycles since humans interacted directly with the Coalition, and the general belief was that Earth's species had withdrawn, content with their corner of the galaxy, their curiosity and wild independence slowly fading. With time, Yorvex activated his fleet's defense perimeter, though he didn't expect trouble. This would be a simple redirection, perhaps a confiscation of technology, and an official reprimand delivered through diplomatic relays. The Yilax Dominion's presence in the sector was well known. No one dared challenge it, especially not with a joke of a fleet. "Approach and escort protocol, standard formation," Yorvex ordered, and his destroyers began moving toward the humans. Still, the strangers made no effort to flee or defend, but as one Yilax corvette drew within 1,000 clicks of the lead human vessel, the monitors blinked and flickered. An ancient signal burst from the human ship, a tight band code not used in over 5 centuries. Yorvex's technicians froze. "Sir, that's a Terran legacy code." Yorvex raised an eye ridge. "Clarify." "It's pre-FTL military designation, used only by Terran doomsday weapons during the last expansion." For a moment, the bridge fell silent. Yorvex stepped forward, focusing on the lead human ship. It had no name painted on the hull, no insignia, just burn marks and dents, like a ghost dragged out of time. Then its surface shimmered. Armor plating that looked like scraps slowly rearranged, revealing carbon-forged black alloy beneath. Weapon mounts emerged from compartments that hadn't existed seconds ago, its silhouette transformed from freighter to warship in moments. Yorvex's heart pounded. They masked their war forms. That's impossible. The other 9 ships followed, shedding their false identities, exposing silent gun decks, shield emitters, and something worse, identifiers. Yorvex stared in disbelief as the names lit up across his command table. Helios Wake, Iron Requiem, Seraphine Drift. Names from forgotten battlefields, long believed destroyed or scrapped when humanity agreed to peace terms. One by one, the Terran ships reactivated, transmitting Terran Fleet Command protocols. A final signal blinked onto every Yilax and Coalition monitor. Simulation mode deactivated. Combat authorization granted by Article 9. Terran Fleet awakened. Panic rippled through the Coalition fleet. Weapons locked. Emergency signals transmitted. Yorvex shouted for retreat protocols, but already the nearest Yilax destroyer was turning. Too late. A single flash, no sound, and the ship split apart, railgun slugs having passed clean through its core. No warnings, no build-up, just death. Yorvex stood frozen as his fleet, a force capable of suppressing entire star systems, suddenly found itself outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outmatched. In his mind, the past screamed back. The Terran wars, the AI uprisings, the black ships from Earth that vanished after the Accord. "This can't be happening," he whispered. But it was. The human fleet hadn't come for peace. They had come silently, with their claws hidden, like predators pretending to sleep. And now that they were awake, the galaxy remembered why it had once feared the name of humanity. The battlefield above Kethra 9 had turned cold, but not quiet. Every coalition ship stood frozen, unsure whether to fight or flee as the human fleet revealed its true form. Captain Yorvex stared at the blinking code on his display. A code not seen for 500 years, a code buried in history, one reserved for ancient weapons that had once scorched stars and erased fleets with single strikes. The bridge of the Fury of Stars was filled with quiet fear now, not laughter. Even the junior officers had stopped speaking. The human ships no longer looked like outdated freighters or science vessels. They had changed shape with terrifying precision, their armor now sleek and black, their weapons active but still held in check. The ship nearest to Yorvex's line, the one named Helios Wake, emitted a strange, low-frequency hum, not a weapon, but something older, possibly a control signal or an encrypted AI sync. "They're coordinating silently," whispered the sensor tech, eyes wide. "No comms, no lightspeed chatter. This is dark net formation strategy." Yorvex had heard rumors of such things in Academy, old war stories from when humanity rose too fast, built machines too smart, and fought in ways the Coalition never fully understood. He remembered a line from one of the banned books. "Humanity doesn't build fleets, it builds traps that look like fleets." A chill ran down his spine. He tried to open hailing frequencies again, this time with a peaceful code, but got no response. Only another wave of the same ancient signal, now carrying an updated timestamp. "They're syncing their fire controls," the weapons officer said, voice tight. "But they're not locking onto us directly. It's like they're mapping the battlefield, including Kethra 9 itself." That made no sense. If this was an attack, they would have started firing by now, but still they didn't. They just floated, watching, waiting. Yorvex knew they were stalling for time. His second-in-command, a cautious but loyal officer named Creval, leaned in. "Sir, we should fall back and regroup. Something about this doesn't feel like a random show of power." Yorvex wanted to agree, but leaving now could send the wrong message, or worse, spark an engagement. Then, without warning, one of the Terran ships blinked out of visual range, not cloaking, not jumping, just disappearing. "Where is it?" shouted Creval. "Rescan!" But before the scans could refresh, the missing ship reappeared directly behind the second Yilax destroyer. A single pulse flashed from the Terran vessel, and a blue ripple cut through the destroyer's shields like smoke. No explosion, just systems failure. The Yilax ship went dark, drifting powerless. Not destroyed, just disabled. That was a message. Humanity had the strength to kill, but chose not to. Yet. Yorvex now understood the pattern. This was not a first strike. It was a demonstration. He glanced at the map. The humans had positioned themselves between the Coalition fleet and Kethra 9, as if defending the planet. But why? That world was barely inhabited, just a listening post and a few mining outposts. He had to know more. He ordered long-range scans of the system, looking for anything strange, and after a long moment, the data came back. Buried deep beneath Kethra 9's surface was an active subspace signature. Not natural, and not Yilax. "Sir," Creval whispered, "something else is down there, and I don't think the humans came here to fight us. I think they came to stop what's under that planet from waking up." Yorvex stared in disbelief. All this time, they'd believed humanity was gone, scattered, a form of power content with stories and science. But what if they had only gone silent to prepare? What if they had known about threats in deep space long before anyone else and stayed, hidden to act when no one else would? If that was true, then Yorvex had made a mistake, not in challenging the Terrans, but in assuming they were the enemy. A deep rumble passed through the fury of stars, not from the human ships, but from the planet itself. The lights dimmed, sensors went haywire, then a new signal lit up on every screen, not from the humans, not from Yorvex's fleet, but from Kethra-9's surface. It was vast, coded in a language older than Coalition records. "Phase resonance detected," one technician said shakily. "A rift is opening below." Suddenly, the Terran fleet shifted formation, moving with swift, perfect alignment, forming a curved wall between the planet and the Coalition forces. At last, the Helios wake transmitted a message, simple, brief, and in clear galactic basic. "Do not interfere. You are not the target. Let us contain this." Yorvex's hands trembled. He had come here expecting a show of dominance, perhaps to teach foolish humans a lesson. Instead, he had arrived at the edge of a secret war. One, older than the Coalition, a war the Terrans had never stopped fighting. The old ghosts of their warships had returned, not to conquer, but to protect. And now that they were active again, Yorvex realized with growing dread that this might only be the beginning, that something else, something far worse, had awakened. Too, the silence in space was heavy, the kind that made even the most experienced officers feel like something was crawling under their skin, waiting to strike. And aboard the Fury of Stars, Captain Yorvex stood frozen, watching the human fleet. As it moved like a single creature, smooth and silent, no waste of energy, no fear, just purpose. The Terran warships, now fully revealed, didn't posture or aim their weapons for show. They simply took position with calm confidence, blocking the path to Kethra-9, their weapons armed, but still not firing. The warning had been clear. Do not interfere. But Yorvex knew his commanders would not accept this silent threat, not without action, not with two of their ships already gone, one disabled, one destroyed. Orders came from High Command. Stand your ground. Do not let the humans take control of a Coalition-claimed system, even if it's just a backwater world like Kethra-9. The pressure grew on Yorvex's shoulders, and though every instinct told him this was not a fight he wanted, duty and pride pressed him forward. "Prepare strike formations," he said quietly. His voice didn't rise, but it cut the tension in the air. "No full engagement. Fire a warning barrage. Show them we will not be pushed." Krevel, ever cautious, hesitated, but nodded. Moments later, a wave of torpedoes and plasma rounds launched from the Fury of Stars and her escorts, not at the Terran fleet directly, but near them, a calculated display of strength, a test. The response was immediate. Without a single word, without a broadcast, the Terran fleet moved. Railguns fired in perfect sync from 3 ships at once, blue-white streaks of hypermetal slugs cutting across the void with speeds that defied most. Tracking systems. One of the Coalition's cruisers vanished in the blink of an eye, its hull ripped apart mid-maneuver. No explosion, just sudden destruction, clean and efficient. The next volley came not from forward cannons, but from strange side-mounted pods on the Terran ships that launched high-speed drones, small and silent, weaving through electronic jamming and shredding the Coalition's corvettes before countermeasures could even react. On the bridge of the Fury, alarms blared, and damage reports came in before the officers could even name the source of the attack. "We can't lock them," someone shouted. "Their hulls are shifting." Adaptive camouflage. Yorvex clenched his fists. These were not new tricks. These were old Terran technologies, banned or lost after the War of the 100 Stars, now returned, sharper, faster, deadlier. Another cruiser exploded, this time a direct hit from a spinal-mounted energy lance, one so powerful it cracked a nearby asteroid into dust as a side effect. And still, the Terrans didn't speak, didn't threaten, didn't gloat. They simply dismantled the Coalition force, one piece at a time, with calm precision. Yorvex watched as his formation fell apart, each ship trying to retreat, scramble. "Survive!" He opened a general broadcast. "Cease fire! Cease fire! This is Captain Yorvex of the Yilax Dominion. We surrender control of the field. We request ceasefire." The human fleet stopped firing at once, not a shot more. They didn't press forward, didn't chase. They simply held their position as though the battle had never started. It was terrifying. It was alien. It was human. And then the channel opened again, this time with a face. A woman, pale-skinned, dark-eyed, and calm as the void itself. She wore no medals, no insignia. "This is Commander Lyra Chen of the Helios Wake. Stand down. Do not approach Kethra 9. What sleeps there must not wake." The channel closed. On the floor of the Fury, Crevel looked up from a smoking console. "Sir, why do I feel like we're not at the center of this war?" Yorvex didn't answer. He couldn't. Because deep down he already knew the truth. This wasn't a human attack, it was a human warning. And the real enemy hadn't even arrived yet. Captain Yorvex stood silently at the edge of the Fury of Stars' shattered bridge window, watching the human fleet hang in space like a dark shield between his battered forces and the quietly turning planet below, Kethra 9, which now pulsed with strange energy that the senses could barely understand. His mind spun with questions that had no answers, fears that felt too old to belong to the present, and the face of Commander Lyra Chen echoed in his thoughts, not just because of her calm warning, but because she spoke with the weight of forgotten history. The Coalition had always taught that humanity had withdrawn after the Treaty of Ember Prime, their war machines dismantled, their AI partners disbanded, and their fleets broken or salvaged. History books painted the Terrans as brilliant but unstable, too quick to rise, too stubborn to follow the Coalition's unified laws, and after the Terran departure, it was said that Earth chose isolation over diplomacy. But what if none of that had been true? What if the history taught to generations of commanders like Yorvex had been rewritten not by scholars, but by fear? On a hunch, Yorvex ordered his archivists to search ancient records, forbidden documents, anything locked behind Coalition firewalls, and to his surprise, more and more pieces began to surface. Declassified logs of battles where Terran ships had not retreated but vanished. Reports from scouts who claimed entire enemy fleets disappeared near Terran space without a trace. Faint records of deep space. Warnings sent from outposts that no longer existed, all ending with the same strange phrase, "The quiet protocol is still active." Yorvex didn't know what it meant until his tech officers linked it to a hidden layer of encryption on the Terran broadcast from earlier. And when decrypted, it revealed a chilling phrase: "Containment breach level 2. Operation Silence Broken." He didn't need to be a human historian to know this wasn't standard military language. It was procedural, old, and likely classified even to most Terrans, but somehow the surviving warships out here still obeyed it. They weren't just defending Kethra 9. They were following a buried order from a forgotten war. When his officers brought in the last secure scan of the planet's surface, everything changed. Beneath the crust of Kethra 9, sealed inside a massive stasis vault, was not an alien artifact or a mining cache. It was a vessel, not Coalition-made, not Yilax, human, but ancient. The AI analysis called it impossible, a Terran dreadnought that didn't match any known class. Dormant but intact, buried deep underground in a protective shell of hardened quantum glass, surrounded by a planetary defense grid that had never activated until now. The humans weren't trying to seize the planet, they were trying to keep that ship asleep. "It's not just a ship," Crivel whispered, pointing at the thermal readings. "It has a power source we don't recognize, and something inside it is moving." Yorvex realized it then. This was no accident. The Terrans had planted that, shipped there centuries ago, hidden it, protected it, and erased all record of it from galactic knowledge. Why? Because it wasn't just a warship. It was something older, a weapon too dangerous to be used. And now, something on Kethra 9 had disturbed it. Maybe mining activity, maybe seismic shifts. But whatever the reason, the Terrans had returned not to attack, but to prevent a greater threat from rising. "This is why they vanished," Yorvex said slowly. "They didn't retreat. They were guarding something, watching the old fires, making sure they didn't rise again." It was a truth that shattered everything he had believed. The Coalition had painted itself as the great peacekeeper, but it had lied to itself about the war it never truly won. The humans hadn't disappeared because they were defeated. They had disappeared because they chose to carry the burden alone. A flicker on the screen pulled Yorvex from his thoughts. The ground on Kethra 9 cracked, and part of the surface lifted. The vault was opening. The ancient ship was awakening. Human fleet signals flared instantly, not in panic, but in urgency, shifting into a containment pattern, deploying energy barriers and drone webs that created a shimmering net across space. And for the first time, Yorvex saw fear in the humans. Not fear of the Coalition, but fear of their own past. A message came through from Lyra Chen, her voice sharper now. "If you want to survive, you must leave orbit. This is not your war." But Yorvex didn't run. Not now. He had to know the truth, because if what was inside that ship had once needed the entire Terran fleet to bury it, then its awakening meant the galaxy was not ready for what came next. And history, it seemed, had just begun to rewrite itself. The planet Kethra 9 shook as more of its crust peeled away, revealing the massive buried structure beneath. An ancient Terran dreadnought, older than any living species could remember, still silent, but glowing faintly with power that seemed unnatural, as if it pulsed with the memory of some terrible purpose. And aboard the Fury of Stars, Captain Yorvex stood frozen at his command deck, surrounded by officers whispering in fear and awe, their eyes glued to the displays showing the ship that was never meant to rise again. The human fleet was in full motion now, no longer still or waiting. They formed a shifting sphere around the planet, releasing thousands of drones and signal buoys that folded in and out of space like flickering ghosts. And Yorvex realized this wasn't just containment, it was lockdown. "They're forming." "A dimensional seal," Krival said quietly, his face pale. "Not just shields, they're locking local space so nothing can escape or enter." That kind of technology was forbidden under Coalition law, classified as universe-tier interference tech. But the Terrans were using it openly now, not because they wanted to break laws, but because they no longer cared who saw. They had a mission, and it had nothing to do with diplomacy. "They didn't come here by accident," Yorvex muttered almost to himself. "They knew. They've always known." The surface of the planet cracked again, and a tower of energy erupted into space, purple and red, shimmering with patterns that made no sense to any computer. The Terran AI systems lit up in response, and for the first time, the ancient human fleet began transmitting, not messages but warnings, encoded pulses in every known language, including several long dead, and Yorvex could finally read one of them in his own tongue. "Operation Harbinger. Phase 1 confirmed. Hostile memory signature detected. Activate null protocol." Hostile memory. What did that mean? Before he could ask, the sensors locked onto something impossible. Inside the dreadnought, something had awakened. Not a person, not even a crew, but a signal. "Sir," said the sensor tech, hands shaking, "it's broadcasting, but not from inside the ship. It's broadcasting from under it, from below the core. There's something else down there." And in that moment, Yorvex understood. The dreadnought wasn't just a ship, it was a vault, a key, a lid over something even worse. A weapon, yes, but one not built by humans, merely held by them. Lyra Chen appeared again on the comms, her eyes sharper now, her voice tight with something between fear and duty. That ship was the last prison from the old war, before the Coalition, before even Earth had a name. What's inside it is not a fleet, It's not a species. It's a virus, a sentient echo, something we once fought across 50 systems until we found a way to trap it. Jorvex stared, stunned. A mind? He asked. No, she replied, a memory that refuses to die. It infects code, thought, language, machines. It turns ships against worlds. It makes AI tear their creators apart. It nearly ended us once. We buried it here and erased the records. Until your people started drilling for ore in the wrong place. Her words hit hard. This wasn't a Terran weapon. It was something older. And humanity had stayed silent for centuries to make sure it never rose again. Now Jorvex saw it clearly. The human fleet had not returned to reclaim territory, or prove strength, or seek vengeance. They had returned to fulfill an ancient oath, to stop a forgotten evil before it escaped. The dreadnought above Kethra 9 opened like a flower, its massive hull unfolding into segments that released thick rings of data bursts. Pure digital warfare, hammering down at the planet's surface. And, deep below, something screamed. Not with sound, but through sensors, a cry that melted lines of code and twisted auto-navigation signals. Even aboard the Fury, systems began glitching, screens flashing strange shapes, voices whispering from static. Jorvex shouted for manual overrides, and Creval pulled cables from the AI core just in time to stop it from repeating the strange patterns aloud. That's it, he gasped. That's the infection. It spreads by sound, image, data itself. The Terran net tightened, drones forming hard light walls that shimmered as the memory virus tried to escape. But it was fast. One drone flickered and went black. Then another, and then a Terran support ship detonated itself without warning. Vaporized before it could be turned. Jorvex watched in horror as the humans sacrificed their own to prevent the spread. They had protocols, yes, but they were willing to die to keep this thing locked away. They're not here to win, Creval whispered. They're here to contain. As the dreadnought fired again, a strange golden pulse spread from it, a kind of cleansing wave that reset corrupted systems, burned the infection from local space, and sealed part of the rift forming below. But it wasn't enough. The ground beneath the ship cracked one last time, and from the darkness rose a shape made of shifting metal, light and symbols. Something that looked like a ship, but moved like thought. It wasn't alive, but it was aware, and it had seen the stars again. Jorvex turned to his crew. We have to help them, he said firmly. They didn't ask for our aid, but if we don't stand with them now, we'll all fall later.